and welcome to Stories for Wonderful Children. I'm Dan Wendelin, your host and storyteller. Years ago, I began recording the bedtime stories I told my children every night. Now, I'd like to share those stories with you. I hope you enjoy my Stories for Wonderful Children. A few days after the day that Winella had to call the fish police to keep Jack Frost from breaking into her house, it occurred to her that she had not had time to say thank you to Officer Cod, and she wondered where she could find him. She asked her mommy, and her mommy said that she should try calling the non-emergency number for the police, the number you called when you didn't have an emergency. She looked it up in the phone book and she called it, and they said that Officer Cod lived in the Atlantic Ocean when he wasn't on duty, and that right now he was on a short vacation. Winella thanked them very much. She thought that if anyone knew where she could find Officer Cod so that she could thank him, it would be the Queen of the Water. So she went and she got some things that she wanted to give to Officer Cod that she had made herself. She had a medal that said Hero on it, that she had made out of aluminum foil, that she had wrapped around a little piece of cardboard and put a safety pin through the back of. And she had a letter that she had written that thanked him very much for all the help and how brave he had been. And she also had taken along what she thought fish might like to eat, which was bread with some butter on it. She wasn't really sure what a cod might like, but she thought that that was a pretty reasonable guess. So she took all of those things and she put them in her backpack, and she went and she sat down at the piano with the blue and pink keys. She played Under the Sea, and the piano room of her house faded around her, and she found herself in the throne room of the palace of the Queen of the Water. She looked up. The Queen of the Water was just busy signing some documents. And she said, "Oh, Winella, how nice to see you. It's been quite some time since you visited. What brings you here today?" And Winella said, "Well," and she told her the story about Jack Frost trying to break into her house, and how she had called 911 on the phone because her mommy hadn't been home, and how the fish police had arrived, and how Officer Cod had taken Jack Frost off after he and Winella and Sarah Mae Figment had frightened off the goblins. And then Winella said, "And now I'm looking for him because I'd like to give him some gifts to thank him, but I don't know where he is. I called the police and they said he was on vacation right now." And the Queen of the Water said, "Well, do you know where he usually lives?" And Winella said, "Well, they told me that he usually lives in the Atlantic Ocean." And the Queen of the Water said, "Oh, okay. Well, I tell you what, why don't you stay here, and you can help me with a project I'm working on, and I will send to the royal census taker and get the information about where this Officer Cod lives, so that we can maybe call him up on the bubble phone and find out where he's taking a vacation." She said, and so she sent a runner to go find the royal census taker. And she said, "Here's my problem, Winella." Winella came over and looked, and there was a puzzle laid out on the table. The Queen said, "I just haven't been able to make a start at this at all." And Winella looked at it and she said, "I can see why. I don't see any edge pieces." And the Queen said, "Yes, I know. This is an extra hard kind of jigsaw puzzle. It doesn't have any edge pieces. It just looks like a jigsaw at the edge, so it's much harder to figure out." Winella said, "Oh, that is tricky." She said, "What's the picture supposed to be of?" And the Queen said, "It's supposed to be a picture of my palace." Winella said, "Do you have the box?" The Queen handed her the box. Winella looked at it and thought for a moment. She'd never seen the Queen's palace from the outside before. The picture was really lovely, with turrets and giant seashells around the walls and the gate, and great spiral seashells on top. It was very beautiful, all in pale shades of pink and white, orange, brown, and tan. Well, Winella sat down to the puzzle, and she could see that there were some places where the queen had already put 2 or 3 pieces together, but she had been unable to link them. Winella looked carefully at the box. She saw a picture of a large orange seashell that was part of the front gate of the palace. She looked at the pieces the queen had already put together and could see that 2 of the groups both had pictures of that large parts of that large orange seashell, and so she linked those 2 together. And from there, she had a good starting point in the center where the castle was. And so she began to build the castle around it. She was concentrating so hard that she didn't hear the royal census taker come in. And so she was quite surprised when the queen tapped her on the shoulder and said, "That's excellent, Winella. You've done a wonderful job of getting me started. I think I'll be able to take it from there." She said, "Come along. The royal census taker has given me the address and phone number of this Officer Cod. Let's give him a call on the bubble phone and see if they know where he's on vacation." So they called. The queen walked over to the wall, and there at the wall there was a phone that looked a lot like an ordinary phone, except it was attached to a tube of water instead of to a wire. The queen gave Winella the number. Winella picked up the receiver and began to press the buttons. As she pressed the buttons, bubbles went up the tube and off out of the palace. The queen said the bubbles carry the message. So Winella pressed 3, and 3 little bubbles went. Winella pressed 5. She pressed 2. And she continued on the number till she had dialed the whole number. She waited a moment, and then she heard someone answer and say, "Hello?" And Winella said, "Yes, this is Winella. Is this Officer Cod's house?" "Yes, this is Officer Cod's house. He's on vacation right now. This is his son. How can I help you?" And Winella said, "Well, Officer Cod came to my house and helped me very much a few days ago, and I really wanted to thank him, and I was hoping you could tell me where he was on vacation." And Son said, "Oh, yes, he's in the Blue Lagoon." The Blue Lagoon. "Okay, thank you." She hung up the phone. She turned to the Queen of the Water and said, "They say he's in the Blue Lagoon." And the Queen of the Water said, "Oh, well, that's easy. Here, let's sit down at your piano." So they sat down together at the piano, and Winella played Blue Lagoon, Blue Lagoon, I dream of you, Blue Lagoon. And the palace faded out from around them, and they were sitting on a beach, and the beach was shaped like a large semicircle or horseshoe shape. In the middle there was a deep pool. The queen said, "Well, you'll have to get their attention." They could see fish playing down deep in the pool. Winella said, "Maybe this will work." So she took the bread out of her backpack, she tore it up into pieces, and she threw it out over the water. That got the fish's attention, because some of those fish were very hungry, and they started coming up to the top. One of the fish that came up to the top was a large green fish, and Winella pointed and said, "Look, there he is." The Queen of the Water said, "Excuse me, may we talk to you for a moment?" The large green fish came out of the water. He was not wearing his policeman outfit, and he said, "Yes, how may I help you?" And Winella said, "Well, I don't know if you remember me, Officer Cod, but you came to my house and helped me with Jack Frost." "Oh, yes. He was a tricky little fellow, wasn't he? But he's in jail now, having to think about what he's done for a few days. How can I help you now?" And Winella said, "Well, actually, I just wanted to thank you for all your help. You were so brave that I just wanted to give you a couple things." And she gave him the medal that she had made that said Hero. And she gave him the letter thanking him so much. And she gave him a big hug, and she said, "Thank you so much for all your help." And Officer Cod said, "Oh, that's so nice. Well, thank you for being such a nice little girl. He said, well, I'm going to go back to playing on my vacation now. And Winella said, okay, bye-bye. And then she got back on the piano, and she played Under the Sea and took the Queen of the Water back to her palace. She played her home, home song in order to go home. And then she was back in her own house. And that was her adventure to go visit Officer Cod. And that's the end of the story.
Thanks for listening to Stories for Wonderful Children. I created today's story, but questions and clever commentary were supplied by my children. The intro and outro music is by Brandon Thompson. If you enjoy the show, please tell someone about it, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Our email is storiesforwonderfulchildren@gmail.com, and you can also find us on Facebook or Twitter. I'm Dan Winella, reminding you to tell someone you love a story.